Welcome. Today we are examining a stack of sources that tell the story of perhaps the most successful female musical act in American history.
Right.
It is a narrative that operates on two very distinct levels for those of you listening. On one level, you have this story of unprecedented commercial success and a sound that defined an entire generation.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, it is a biography of a family that was ultimately dismantled by that exact same success. We are talking about the Andrews sisters.
Laverne, Maxine, and Patty. And it's really difficult to overstate just how massive they were in their prime.
Yes.
When we look at the cultural landscape of the first half of the 20th century, they stand as the most popular female vocal group, without question.
The statistics in the material are quite remarkable.
They are staggering. We are looking at estimated record sales between 75 and 100 million.
And we have to remember for our listeners, those numbers were achieved in an era long before digital streaming, before global internet marketing. That is 75 to 100 million physical records sold.
Exactly. It required a physical transaction for every single unit. Somebody had to go to a store and buy it.
Yeah.
To give you some context on their dominance on the charts, they had 113 charted Billboard hits.
Which is incredible.
And out of those, 46 reached the top 10. I mean, that is a higher number of top 10 hits than Elvis Presley or the Beatles achieved.
That puts their magnitude into perspective.
It really does. They also appeared in 17 Hollywood films, which is more than any other singing group in motion picture history. They effectively defined the sound of the World War II era. You know, that close harmony, the swing, and the boogie woogie styles.
Yet the central tension of this entire exploration is the contrast between that sound and their lived reality.
Yes.
On stage and on those recordings, they were known for an incredibly tight, lightning-quick vocal synchronization. They moved as one unit. They breathed as one unit.
But the biographical data shows something else entirely.
Exactly. It shows a life marked by bitter feuds, long periods of estrangement, and then significant personal tragedy.
It's this sharp dichotomy of perfect harmony in their art and total discord in their private lives. That is the framework for our discussion today.
So our mission is to track that entire arc. We need to cover their origins in Minneapolis, the specific economic pressures that formed them, and analyze their absolute dominance during World War II.
And then, of course, the slow and painful disintegration of their relationship.
Right. And finally, their enduring legacy, which has actually found a very surprising second life in modern media, like video games.
Let's start at the beginning.
The sources indicate they were not born into the entertainment industry, nor were they born into wealth.
No, quite the opposite. They were born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, into a very working-class environment. Their father, Peter Andreas, was a Greek immigrant who later changed his surname to Andrews.
And their mother.
Their mother, Olga Bergliot Solly, known to the family as Ollie, was Norwegian and raised in the Lutheran faith. Now, there's an important piece of context here regarding the parents.
Okay.
The Solly family originally disapproved of the marriage between Olga and Peter.
That suggests a level of familial tension existed before the sisters were even born.
It does. It set a tone of sort of us against the world for the immediate family, although the relationship with the extended family was reportedly repaired after the birth of their first child.
Which was Laverne.
Right. Laverne Sophia Andrews, born in 1911. She became the contralto of the group. She provided the low harmonies. Then you had Maxine Anglin Andrews, born in 1916.
She sang soprano.
Yes, the high notes. And finally, Patricia Marie Andrews, or Patty, born in 1918. She was the mezzo-soprano and eventually became the lead singer. She was really the focal point of the group.
The formation of the group happened remarkably early. This was not something they simply decided to do as adults.
Not at all. Patty was only 7 years old when the trio was technically formed. By the time they were 12, they won first prize at a talent contest at the Orpheum Theater in Minneapolis.
But this wasn't just a recreational hobby for them.
No, they had a trade-off system in place. Laverne played piano accompaniment for silent films at the theater. In exchange for that, she got dancing lessons for all three sisters.
So they were essentially working for their education.
They were, but the push into professional touring became a strict financial necessity later on.
Because the family faced a significant economic collapse.
Their father, Peter, owned a restaurant in Minneapolis. When that business collapsed, the family was in serious financial trouble. This is a crucial motivator for their entire trajectory.
Right.
The sisters didn't just go on the road to become stars. They went on the road to support the family.
It shifted the dynamic completely from a creative pursuit to a survival strategy.
Exactly. So they entered the vaudeville circuit, which was an incredibly grueling way to grow up.
The grind of that circuit is well documented.
It was relentless. They attended Franklin Junior High and North High School in Minneapolis, but their real education happened on the road. They actually started out as imitators.
Who were they imitating?
Their primary influence was the Boswell sisters. The Boswell sisters were a jazz vocal group from New Orleans who were incredibly popular until they broke up in 1936. The Andrews sisters essentially mimicked that style initially.
And they were touring with various bands during this time.
Yes, touring with various dance bands, including Leon Belasco and his orchestra, and a comic band leader named Larry Rich. They were driving hundreds of miles between gigs, sleeping in the car or in cheap hotels, just trying to find a foothold in a very competitive industry.
The breakthrough finally came in 1937.
That is the pivotal year. They had started gaining some national attention with a few recordings and radio broadcasts, but they hadn't had that one defining hit yet.
The moment that changed everything was a recording for Decca Records.
The song was by Mir Bis Dushon.
Which translates to me, you are beautiful.
Correct. Now, the origin of this song is significant. It was originally a Yiddish tune from a musical comedy.
How did it transition to the Andrews sisters?
The lyricist, Sammy Cahn, heard it being performed in an African-American theater in Harlem. It was being performed in Yiddish, and he saw the crowd reacting to the rhythm. He acquired the rights and translated the lyrics into English.
Why did this specific track resonate so strongly with the public?
It was a combination of the swing rhythm and that tight harmony. The sisters utilized a specific vocal blend where the three voices were incredibly close together in pitch. It creates a very dense, highly resonant sound.
Right.
When they recorded by Mir Bis Dushon, that sound just clicked with the public. It established them as a household name almost overnight. This was the launch pad. Over the next 2 years, they had a string of best-selling records that cemented their status.
Success at that level usually requires a very solid support structure. Who are the key figures guiding them at this stage?
The most immediate figures were their parents, Olga and Peter. They were always present. They managed the girls' lives and their finances.
And musically?
Musically, the key figure was Vic Schoen. He was their orchestra leader and musical arranger. He deserves a massive amount of credit for their sound.
So.
He created the brassy, upbeat arrangements that perfectly complemented their voices. He knew how to write horn parts that punched through the mix without drowning out the vocals. And on the business side, you had Jack and David Kapp. They were the founders of Decca Records. They saw the potential in the sisters and knew exactly how to market them to a mass audience.
This leads us right into the 1940s and the war years. This seems to be the period most people instantly associate with the Andrews sisters.
It is absolutely the defining era of their career. Their peak popularity coincided perfectly with World War II. In many ways, they became the musical embodiment of the home front.
They represented a very specific type of African optimism and energy.
They did. During these years, they had numerous hit records, and a significant number of them were collaborations with Bing Crosby.
The volume of their work with Crosby is substantial in the historical record.
It is one of the most prolific and successful pairings in recording history. They recorded 47 songs with Bing Crosby. 23 of those songs charted on Billboard.
That is an incredible success rate.
They had million sellers like Pistol Packin' Mama and Don't Fence Me In. You have to remember, Bing Crosby was the biggest male star in the world at that time, and the Andrews sisters were the biggest female group. Putting them together was a guaranteed commercial success.
But beyond the collaborations, their own standalone hits were often service-themed.
Yes. Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy is likely the most recognizable example. Recorded in 1941, it is a masterpiece of the genre.
The sources classify it as an early example of jump blues.
It is. The song tells the story of a trumpeter drafted into the Army. It was even nominated for Best Song at the Academy Awards. But it wasn't just that one track. You also had Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree.
And Three Little Sisters.
And A Hot Time in the Town of Berlin. These songs spoke directly to the experience of soldiers deploying and the people waiting for them at home. They were providing a literal soundtrack for the separation caused by the war.
The records showed they did not just sing about the war from the safety of a studio. They were physically present in the war effort.
Extensively present. They toured to entertain Allied forces in Africa and Italy. They visited Army, Navy, Marine, and Coast Guard bases all across the United States.
They went into active war zones.
War zones, military hospitals, munitions factories. The schedule was exhausting. They also volunteered heavily at the Hollywood Canteen. That was a club founded by Bette Davis and John Garfield specifically for servicemen. And they worked at the Stage Door Canteen in New York City.
What do the accounts say about the atmosphere at those canteens?
It was a place where servicemen, completely regardless of rank, could see the biggest stars in the world. They could get a free meal and they could dance. The Andrews sisters were fixtures there. They would sing, dance, and just talk with the troops.
There are accounts of them treating random servicemen to dinner.
Yes, when they were dining out in public. It was a very personal connection they fostered with the military personnel.
And they recorded material specifically for the troops, known as V-discs.
Victory discs. These were records produced specifically for distribution to Allied fighting forces. They were not for commercial sale at all.
The unions allowed artists to record these without royalties as a contribution to the war effort.
And the Andrews sisters recorded hundreds of these.
Lie.
Because of this immense output and their constant presence on radio shows like Command Performance and Mail Call, they were actually dubbed the sweethearts of the Armed Forces radio service.
However, the sources indicate that not every hit from this era was without controversy. We need to look at the song Rum and Coca-Cola.
Right. This is a fascinating case study in pop culture history, and it highlights the complexities of the time. Rum and Coca-Cola was released in 1945 and became one of their best-known recordings.
But it sparked a significant amount of trouble on multiple fronts.
It did. First, there was the commercial aspect. Radio stations were very hesitant to play it.
Because the title mentioned a commercial product by name.
Exactly. Coca-Cola. This was against the policy of many broadcasters at the time who viewed it as giving away free advertising.
And then there was the content of the lyrics, which were quite a departure from their usual wholesome image.
The lyrics were subtly and sometimes not so subtly suggestive. They impartially documented a reality in Trinidad, implying that local women were prostituting themselves to U.S. servicemen at the naval base there.
Lines like, both mother and daughter working for the Yankee dollar.
Yes. It was a direct commentary on the American presence in the Caribbean and the economic disparity that led to transactional relationships. It was a commentary on colonialism, but wrapped in this very catchy calypso tune.
There was also a legal dispute regarding the song's origin.
Yes, the song was actually based on a Trinidadian calypso by an artist named Lord Invader. There was a major lawsuit regarding the copyright and provenance of the song. The melody and the concept had been lifted without proper credit.
How did the sisters defend themselves regarding the lawsuit and the lyrics?
They later defended themselves by saying they were asked to record the tune on very short notice. They claimed they were completely unaware of either the copyright issues or the implications of the lyrics. They said they just thought it was a catchy rhythm.
Whether that ignorance was genuine or just a convenient defense remains a matter of historical debate.
It does. But the song remained a massive hit despite all the baggage attached to it.
The historical records also note an ironic footnote regarding their popularity in Germany during the war.
This is a very strange historical irony. Their records were actually smuggled into Nazi Germany.
How did they get past the censors?
The labels were changed. They were relabeled to read Hitler's marching songs.
That is bizarre.
It is. Bei mir bist du schon was actually a favorite of the Nazis for a time. They loved the melody and the rhythm. But then they discovered the composers were Jewish and the song was originally Yiddish.
And it was banned.
Banned immediately once that was discovered. However, reports from the time indicate that concentration camp inmates would secretly sing it as a form of quiet resistance.
Moving to their visual presence, there were also significant movie stars during this period.
They appeared in 17 Hollywood films. Their first picture was Argentine Nights in 1940, where they were paired with the Ritz Brothers, a comedy trio.
There is an interesting piece of production trivia here that explains their unique performance style on film.
Yes. Universal Pictures was very budget conscious. They flat out refused to hire a choreographer for the sisters. So the Ritz Brothers stepped in and taught the sisters their own eccentric dance steps.
Which explains a lot.
Right. That is why in Argentine Nights and their subsequent film Buck Privates, the Andrews sisters are seen dancing somewhat like the Ritz Brothers. Lots of high energy, almost slapstick movement.
Buck Privates is likely their most significant film appearance.
It featured Abbott and Costello, and it included the on-screen performance of Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. It was a massive box office success.
Universal then hired them for 2 more Abbott and Costello comedies.
Before eventually promoting them to full-fledged stardom in B musicals, they did films like Private Buckaroo and Give Out Sisters. They also did voice work for Disney.
In the animated anthology films Make Mine Music and Melody Time.
Exactly. They were everywhere. on the radio, on the turntable, and on the silver screen.
But as the 1940s ended, the family dynamic, which had been the foundation of all this, began to collapse.
This is where the story shifts drastically from harmony to discord. The catalyst was the death of their parents.
Their mother, Olga, died in 1948.
And their father, Peter, died in 1949. Patty later described this period as the end of their dream world. We have to understand that the parents were the glue holding this whole enterprise together.
They managed the money, they mediated the disputes.
And they provided the central authority. They had been a tight unit all their lives, living and traveling together. With the parents gone, the structure that held the sisters together just dissolved.
The actual breakup of the group happened in 1953. What was the driving force behind the split?
Patty decided to go solo. The conflict was primarily driven by management and money. Patty had married the trio's pianist, Walter Weschler, and he eventually became the group's manager.
And he began making demands.
He began demanding more money for Patty. He argued she was the lead talent and the focal point of the group. He felt she was carrying the act and deserved a much larger share of the profits.
How did Laverne and Maxine find out about this decision?
That is the truly brutal part of the story. They didn't hear it from Patty.
No.
They learned about Patty's decision to leave the group from gossip columns in the newspapers.
That is a staggering way to find out your career and your family business are over.
Imagine reading about it in the morning paper. This caused a bitter separation that lasted 2 full years. And it got legal.
Yeah.
Patty sued Laverne for a larger share of the parents' estate. The sisters simply stopped speaking.
Laverne and Maxine attempted to continue working without Patty.
They tried. They toured as a duo in Australia in 1954. Interestingly, they actually received good press and decent reviews, but the psychological pressure was immense.
They were trying to reconfigure an act that was intrinsically designed for 3 voices.
Exactly. And the stress took a toll. In December 1954, while in Australia, Maxine swallowed 18 sleeping pills.
The reports vary on intent.
Laverne told reporters it was an accident, a mistake with the dosage. But other reports characterized it as a suicide attempt. Maxine said time in the hospital. It put complete halt to any further touring as a duo. It demonstrated just how severe the psychological toll of the breakup was on them.
There was also a televised incident involving Red Skelton that really highlights the animosity during this period.
This happened in October 1954. Laverne and Maxine appeared on the Red Skelton show. To fill in for the missing Patty, Red Skelton dressed in drag, and they lip-synced to Beer Barrel Polka.
It was a very pointed visual gag.
It was. They also sang a humorous song titled, "Why Do They Give the Solos to Patty?" It was clearly meant to be comedy, but Patty did not find it funny at all.
She was furious.
She sent a cease and desist order to Skelton, and she was quoted in the press saying, "Ever since I was born, Maxine has been a problem, and that problem hasn't stopped." The public nature of this feud was incredibly intense.
Despite all of this public animosity, they did reunite in 1956.
They did. They signed a new recording deal with Capitol Records. But by 1956, the musical landscape had shifted entirely underneath them.
Rock and roll and doo-wop were taking over.
Elvis was rising. The big band era was effectively over. They tried to adapt. They recorded singles that incorporated rock sounds, but none of them achieved major success.
The reviews suggest it sounded forced.
It did. They produced some hi-fi albums and eventually moved to Dot Records in the 1960s. They were reduced to re-recording their old hits and covering modern songs.
It's like Puff the Magic Dragon.
Yes, and I Left My Heart in San Francisco, and Mr. Bassman. They toured nightclubs in Vegas and London, but they were now firmly established as a nostalgia act. They weren't driving the culture anymore.
Then tragedy struck the group again.
Laverne, the eldest sister, died of cancer in 1967. She was only 55 years old. This was a critical blow to the group.
The sources emphasize Laverne's role heavily here.
Laverne was the founder of the original trio, but more importantly, she was the peacemaker. She was the one with the most even temperament. She often sided with the parents and kept the balance between the more volatile personalities of Maxine and Patty. Without Laverne, there was no buffer left.
How did they manage the act during her illness?
A singer named Joyce DeYoung filled in for concert appearances, including a spot on the Dean Martin show. But she never actually recorded with them. The group dynamic was just fundamentally different. Once Laverne died, the act effectively ended.
Maxine and Patty performed periodically until 1968, but the friction was too much.
Right. They went their separate ways again.
Maxine made a significant career pivot at this point.
She did, and it is quite remarkable. She left the entertainment industry entirely for a time.
What did she do?
She became the Dean of Women at Tahoe Paradise College.
That is a significant shift.
It is a complete departure from the glitz of Hollywood and the stage. She taught acting, drama, and speech, and she worked extensively with troubled teens. It suggests she was actively looking for a sense of purpose and identity outside of simply being an Andrew's sister.
Patty, meanwhile, was eager to return to solo work.
Yes, she continued trying to forge that solo path.
However, the 1970s brought a massive wave of nostalgia that pulled them back together one last time.
The primary catalyst for this was Bette Midler. In 1973, Midler released a cover of Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. It was a massive hit. It reached the top 10.
It sparked a renewed interest in the swing era.
And specifically in the Andrews Sisters. Suddenly, there was a real demand for them again. This led directly to a Broadway musical in 1974 called Over Here.
This was a major Broadway production.
It was a very high-profile show. It starred Maxine and Patty. And since Laverne was gone, an actress named Janie Sell filled the third spot.
And she was quite successful in the role.
Janie Sell was fantastic. She actually won a Tony Award for her performance. The show itself was a big success. It even helped launch the careers of young actors like John Travolta and Marilu Henner.
But history repeated itself. The show was the last time the sisters ever sang together.
What caused the collapse this time was money and management, yet again. The run ended due to a severe conflict over pay with the producers.
Patty demanded more money.
She did, leading to a lawsuit. As a result, an extensively scheduled road tour that would have been very lucrative was abruptly canceled.
The cast must have been devastated.
The cast was devastated, and the fragile relationship between Maxine and Patty was shattered once again.
And that was the end of their professional relationship entirely.
And their personal one. Patty distanced herself from Maxine completely.
Maxine appealed for a reunion, though.
Maxine appealed publicly and privately. She desperately wanted to reconcile with her sister, but Patty would not explain her motives and completely refused to engage.
In 1982, Maxine had a serious heart attack.
Patty did visit her in the hospital, but the reports strongly indicate that no true reconciliation followed that visit. The silence simply resumed once Maxine recovered.
They both pursued their solo paths after that point.
Maxine had a successful run as a cabaret soloist from 1979 to 1995. She released a solo album. She embraced the legacy, but performed entirely on her own terms.
And Patty's solo career.
Patty started her own solo act in 1980, but it received very poor critical reception. The critics felt she focused way too much on Andrews Sisters material.
Without the three-part harmony, the songs felt empty.
Exactly. They felt she didn't allow her own bluesy vocal talent to shine. Instead, she was trying to recreate the trio sound alone, which just wasn't possible.
There was one brief, highly publicized public reunion in 1987.
They received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It was a notoriously icy reunion.
They sang a few bars of Beer Barrel Polka for the camera.
But they were barely speaking to each other off camera. There is a very telling anecdote about that day. A magnitude 5.9 earthquake actually hit the area that morning.
When asked about it by the press, Patty joked about it.
Patty joked to the press. Some people said that earthquake this morning was Laverne because she couldn't be here. But really, it was just Maxine and me on the telephone.
It was delivered as a joke, but it clearly highlighted the ongoing volatility of their relationship.
It was very sharp.
Maxine passed away in 1995.
She died of a heart attack at age 79. Shortly before she died, she told a music historian that she had no regrets about her career. She was incredibly proud of what they achieved.
But she had one personal regret.
She wished she had the ability and power to bridge the gap with her sister Patty. She died with that estrangement completely unresolved.
Did Patty attend the funeral?
She did not. The sources say Patty was distraught upon hearing the news. The loss of her sister affected her deeply. However, around the exact same time, her husband Wally fell down a flight of stairs and broke both his wrists.
Patty cited this as the reason she could not attend the memorial services.
Right. She remained absent from the services in both New York and California.
We should discuss their personal lives in more detail, particularly their marriages and relationships, as this often intersected with their career dynamics.
Let's look at Laverne first. Laverne married Lou Rogers, who was a trumpet player in Vic Schoen's band in 1948. They remained together until her death. It was a very stable relationship.
Patty's romantic life was more turbulent, according to the biographies.
It was. She married agent Marty Melcher in 1947, but they divorced in 1949. Melcher actually left her to pursue a relationship with Doris Day,
whom he later married and managed.
And famously mismanaged her finances, yes. Patty then married Walter Weschler in 1951. As we mentioned earlier, Weschler became her manager and a central figure in the fierce disputes with her sisters. That marriage lasted nearly 60 years until he died in 2010.
Maxine's life had a different trajectory entirely.
Maxine married the group's manager, Lou Levy, in 1941. They separated in 1949. They adopted 2 children together. Later in life, Maxine entered a long-term partnership with her manager, Linda Wells.
There is a detail regarding adoption in that relationship that really speaks to the legal landscape of the time.
Yes, this is a very significant point regarding LGBTQ history and the severe lack of legal protections available then. Maxine legally adopted Linda Wells as her daughter.
Because gay marriage did not exist.
Exactly. There were absolutely no legal protections for same-sex partners regarding things like inheritance or hospital visitation. Adoption was a strategy used by some couples to ensure basic legal rights.
Wells later stated in an interview that being gay was not Maxine's central focus.
Right. She said Maxine's art and singing were her primary focus, but the adoption was a necessary legal maneuver for them to remain family in the eyes of the law.
Patty was the last surviving sister.
Patty lived until 2013. She died at age 94 in Northridge, California. With her death, the final direct link to that original trio was gone. The voices were silenced, but the recordings, of course, remained.
Let's look at their legacy. It extends far beyond the 1940s.
Musically, their influence is vast. They essentially pioneered the girl group format. You can draw a straight line from the Andrews Sisters to the Supremes, the Beach Boys, the Pointer Sisters, and the Manhattan Transfer.
Bette Midler owes a significant portion of her early success to revitalizing their sound.
And Christina Aguilera used Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy as the direct inspiration for her song, Candyman. They proved that female vocal harmony could be a dominant commercial force.
And interestingly, they have a massive presence in video games, which has introduced them to a demographic that might never have listened to 1940s radio.
This is a fascinating cultural phenomenon. The Andrews Sisters provide the soundtrack for several major video game franchises, particularly those set in dystopian or alternate history settings.
The game BioShock, released in 2007, featured Bamir Bisnushun.
Fallout 3 in 2008 featured Civilization. Mafia 7 featured multiple tracks of theirs. L.A. Noire prominently used Pistol Packin' Mama, and Fallout 4 continued using their music extensively.
Why does their music work so well in these specific games? It's a very specific atmospheric choice.
It creates a sharp atmospheric contrast. These games often depict a world that has completely fallen apart. You have post-nuclear wastelands or crumbling underwater cities.
Right.
And the upbeat, optimistic, perfectly synchronized sound of the Andrews Sisters provides this deeply ironic counterpoint to the visual devastation. It evokes a lost future, a time of pure optimism that has been destroyed. It is haunting and highly effective. For millions of modern gamers, the Andrews Sisters are literally the sound of the apocalypse.
There is also a unique tribute involving elephants that speaks to their ubiquity in the culture during the 1970s.
Yes. In 1973, the Bronx Zoo acquired 3 Asian elephants. They officially named them Laverne, Maxine, and Patty.
It is a testament to their cultural status that even zoo animals were named after them.
And in a final bit of poetic mirroring, Patty the elephant actually outlived the other 2. Just as the human Patty outlived her sisters.
When we look at the full picture of the Andrews Sisters, we are left with a very complicated assessment.
We see musical innovators who were absolutely fearless in their choices. They integrated ethnic styles into American pop music.
They brought calypso with rum and Coca-Cola.
They brought polka with beer barrel polka.
What?
And they brought klezmer and Yiddish themes to the mainstream with Bamir Bisnushun.
But we also see a profound tragedy of relationships. The harmony they perfected in music, that incredibly tight, unbreakable sound, completely eluded them in their personal lives.
They could sing together perfectly, but they could not live together.
It makes you wonder if the immense pressure of childhood stardom, combined with the commodification of their family ties, makes these kinds of fractures somewhat inevitable. It is a complex legacy of artistic triumph and personal silence. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.